If you're using Bento, you need to know what events are, because with events you can improve your tracking, automate every part of your email marketing, and even get Slack notifications for stuff that's happening on your website. So in this video, I'm going to explain what are events, how to figure out what events did different users fire in your website, and how to use those events in automations so you can start automations when one of those events happens. If you don't know who I am, my name is Jordan Parker. I worked as an engineer for 15 years. Now I'm making creator income to help creators make their own money, because I don't think platforms are paying creators fairly. But you're here for Bento. Let's get to that. First, what is an event? When you first open Bento, you're going to see a screen that looks something like this. And as you go through the screen, you're going to basically find a way to integrate Bento into your own website. If you're using WordPress, you press this, you download the plugin, you install it on your website, you fill in the fields, you save, and it suddenly is working. When you finish that integration with whichever platform, there's a bunch of them, you will get every single event that happens on your website being tracked. And that brings us to the question, what are events actually? Well, events can be just about anything. The most basic event you'll see is somebody opens a page. This is called a view event. Someone views something. But you can have events for scrolling, clicking, or any other action that you can think that users do and is important for your business. By default, if you have the setup done correctly, you will have view events, so people opening pages, and form events, so people submitting forms like opt-in boxes will get tracked in Bento. And if you connect Bento to your Stripe account, you also get all of your transactions logged into Bento as events as well. So how does that process work? So an event is something very simple. It's an indicator that something happened, usually on your website, but this could happen on other places as well, like Stripe, for example. When something happens on your website, there is a little piece of code that Bento adds to your website that tracks that. By default, whenever you view a page or when you subscribe to a page, this data gets submitted to Bento and Bento saves this event. But things get better when you have a user who authenticated on the website, because if somebody authenticates on the website, Bento can know which user is doing all of those events, which means that for every person on your website, you get their very detailed history of what they did, which can be very useful for you to understand your users and for you to optimize your website in many different ways. This leads us to where you can see the events for specific users. In this case, I opened the all users segment and I opened myself. And you can see that there is a massive list of events here. And you can see form submissions, you can see view events. If I search for it, I can also see some Stripe events, which can be very useful. So what does an event actually include? Well, the easiest way to find out is you can click any one of the events here. They're all clickable. So when you click this one, for example, this is a view event. That means that I opened the page. We can see all of the data related to this. And we'll see what tracking data we have for this specific event. We have some ID. This is for Bento to know which event is which. We have when it happened. Very useful. We can see when users open different pages. We can see which page specifically. We can see a bunch of other data about the page. We can even see the query string, which means we can see the tracking parameters associated with this specific event. So we get to know where this person came from to get to this specific page. That can be very handy. In this specific case, I came from my YouTube video's description and then I ended up on this specific page. But one of the most important things we want to look at here is the event type, because this event type indicates what kind of an action happened on our website. Because again, you don't need to only fire view events, so you don't only need to fire this single type of event that indicates that somebody opened a page on your website, because the view event is not the only event that exists. You can fire any kind of event for any kind of interaction that people have with your website. If you want to, you can track when users scroll, you can track when users click things, you can track every part of their interaction with Bento, and that can create a very comprehensive suite of data for how people exactly engage with your website. In this case, the view event is useful, but I want something better. So let's go back to the events and find something more interesting. But a view event is a little bit boring, so let's create a new event for somebody submitting a form. If I go to the website and I fill in my data and I submit this form, I'll get a little bit of fireworks. The website is not completely done. And then we come back to Bento and refresh the page, you will see that a new event appears. This is the event that my website submits when a form gets submitted. It is very similar to what the default Bento plugin does. I slightly customize it to my needs, but you'll see something exceptionally similar. So once we scroll down, we can see a lot of the same data that the view event had and a bunch more. So in this case, I'm simply adding more information to this because it's useful for me to understand how people submitted their emails and whatnot. But if you look at this, we see a lot of the same information. Again, if we look for the event type field, we can see that as well. So this event type is actually the important part because using this event type, we can run certain automations or flows as they're called in Bento. So I can just click this thing and it's going to copy. And when we go to a flow, what you see is that when you add a new trigger, let me just delete this one, this is the default one, we have a new event trigger called new custom event. So if we get this one and just drag it, we get a new custom event trigger. But the issue with this trigger is that it simply fires every time you get an event. So every time someone views a page on your website, this is gonna fire. Every time someone subscribes, this is gonna fire. Every time someone does anything on your website, you will get this event firing, which can be very useful, yes, but at the same time, it can be very, very distracting from what you wanna do with this specific flow. For example, if I wanted to run a welcome sequence for my users, I wouldn't want this welcome sequence to run every time somebody views a page. That would be way too aggressive and way too un-user friendly. So let's add another action that would be add to sequence. So if I want to run a welcome sequence, I'll add people to that sequence. I'll connect those. Everything in flows needs to be connected. And here I'll pick the specific sequence, which we won't do for this example. So we actually want to filter the event and we want to filter by custom event. And this is going to check the event type. This custom event is actually checking against the event type field that we saw. So I can actually paste the event that I just copied a few seconds ago, and this is already going to make the automation work exactly how I want. So when somebody subscribes through my main form, this is going to fire. Why? Because if you look at the event type closely, we see there is some sort of a prefix. This one I customized, so it's different. But then we have the ID of the form, which means that every form on your website will get a different event type. And then we have the post ID, which means which page specifically send the traffic. And that means that every post on your website will also have a different event type. This, again, is very useful because when somebody opens your blog, for example, and joins your email list from the first opt-in or from the header, you'll get different events fired and you can run different actions depending on which form did the user use to join your email list. So if we just simply do this, whenever somebody sends this event, and this event basically means they subscribe to the email list because they submitted an email subscription form, then we want to add them to a sequence. That's a very simple flow and a very useful one. But this is a little bit clunky still, because when we do this, we're going to send this welcome sequence only to people who subscribe through this specific page. So in this case, to this page and this form. And if they subscribe to my blog, if they subscribe from any one of the other pages, they're not going to get this welcome sequence fired for them, because again, this event is for this specific form and this specific page. But there is a very easy solution. I can take this, I can remove all of the form data and post data, and I'll simply say that if this custom event contains bricks proform, and again, bricks underscore proform is not going to be what your website has. But if you submit a couple of forms on your website and look at the events that you get, you'll find that the first part of those events is always exactly the same. It might not be bricks underscore proform. In fact, I can almost guarantee it won't be, but you'll have the same text on all of them at the very start of the text. You simply take that and type that part here. And because this filter is contains, which means that the event name contains this text, it means that every single event that contains this text is going to run this next step. When you do this, this automation changes from when somebody subscribed through my main form, it changes to when somebody subscribed through any form. And we can just let it at when somebody subscribed, save, and then do the most important part, and add a dog here, because we all obviously want to have one of those in every single automation. Otherwise, the automation is just not high quality. If you want to have good quality automations, you all obviously want to have a couple of those. They will inspire Bento to work correctly. But yeah, anyway, that's everything I had to say for events. I hope that was very clear. If you have any questions, ask them below. If you're a creator and you're looking for ways to monetize your content better and build a lasting business, join Creator Income from the link below. Cheers.